Without any further ado, take it away.
Cool, thanks. Thanks, Jan. So, yeah, thanks for coming, everyone. My name is Mitch, and I have a geeky name tag to prove it. And I am in the middle of a workshop tour of Germany. Every other, I take a train ride one day, a workshop or a talk the next day, a train ride the next day, a workshop or talk the next day, a workshop or talk the next day. It's certainly not restful, but it's way fun and meeting lots of people. And the talk I'm going to give is one I wrote very recently about the importance of failure. And I've had a lot of experience with that. I think we all have. And I think it is a really important topic that most people are really afraid of. And we really need to embrace it in order to do cool things in our lives. I wouldn't be here without lots and lots and lots of it. And learning from it, of course. So that's a relatively short talk. I've got a whole bunch of blinky light projects here that I can show off afterwards if people like. These are some of the things I use to teach with as I'm traveling around. These are all kits that anyone can make of any age. And if you've been seeing any of these pictures here, there's people of all ages learning all sorts of cool things at hackerspaces and hacker conferences. And I love helping organize those things and teaching people how to solder and make cool things with electronics. What got me famous originally and how I make a living is with TV Be Gone. It's a keychain that I invented. It's, well, I got one here. It's a one-button universal remote control that's a keychain that turns TVs off in public places. And that's all it does.
Very cool.
I think so. And I certainly didn't set out to make a living from that, but life is weird. And I do make a living from it, and I make a living doing what I love. And I love poking other people to let you know that it's an option to make a living doing what you love. It is. It's also an option. I mean, there's lots of options. You can do anything you want, you know. If you want to, you can make a living doing what you don't like. That's an option. A lot of people take that option. Not sure why. But a lot of people do. You can also make a living doing something you hate. A lot of people take that option. It's kind of weird. But you can make a living doing what you love. I have stickers and cards here. Feel free to take any of it. If you ever want help with anything, grab one of my cards. I'm happy to help anytime. Just ask. If you want help with a project, starting your own business, I've learned a lot from a lot of my mistakes and failures there. And if you want help manufacturing, I'm pretty good with doing that too, mostly in China. And if you ever find yourself in a position where you don't like your job, you can contact me because I'm really good into talking people into quitting jobs they don't like. Give me permission, I'll poke you relentlessly until you quit and do something worthwhile. Yeah, and there's also TV Be Gone stickers and other stickers. There's also Noisebridge stickers. That's a hackerspace that I started in San Francisco in 2007. And that's been an amazing part of my life. Well, let me do this talk on failure. Pardon me, because I've got to sort of refer to my notes because it's too recent. I don't know it well enough. But so failure. What would happen if I failed? I mean, I'm standing in front of you intending to give a talk on failure, and what if this talk that I just recently wrote just totally flopped? That would be a failure. But since this is a talk on failure, would that mean it's a success? But probably not. It would probably mean that everyone would know I'm a total loser, and it would probably suck. But you know what? Before I got okay enough at public speaking, I gave some public talks where it was totally obvious that I really sucked at public speaking. And when I think of those experiences, I still get horribly embarrassed when I remember them. And but the thing is, I couldn't have gotten okay enough at public speaking without making all of those horribly embarrassing attempts at public speaking and learning from them. And that's part of what brought me here today. But the thing is, here's an important fact. You cannot do anything cool in your life without failing, and failing a lot. And there's this related thing. I saw this when I was recently in China a few months ago. I was at this really cool little school, primary school for kids in China, and there was a sign on the wall that said, "Every master was once an amateur." And it's really true. You can't get good at anything. You can't become a master at anything without starting totally from the beginning. Even if you're totally talented, amazingly talented, when you first start, you will suck at it. You will. There's no way around it. But as you put in your 10,000 hours into doing whatever it is you're learning, you'll make lots and lots of mistakes, and you'll fail again and again, and it's frustrating, but it's part of learning. And after you've put in your 10,000 hours, you'll be way glad you went through all you went through, even though it's frustrating, even though you failed a lot. But there are many aspects to failure. I'm going to pinpoint two of them. One big, ugly aspect of failure is feeling shame. We're kind of trained to feel shame when we fail. And let me tell you just a little bit about shame in my life. Sadly, the first half of my life was nothing but hopeless, miserable depression. It's really true. I was a total failure at life, or at least that's what I believed, and I was beaten daily by bullies in school, often as the gym teacher watched, like this. Are gym teachers as bad here as they are in the US? Gym teachers. Yeah, but as a little kid, what did I know? I blamed myself. I thought I deserved the misery that I was experiencing. And, as a little kid, what do I know? So to avoid the pain, when I got home, I retreated into the magical world of television. Kids on TV, unlike me, were beautiful, had understanding friends and loving parents, problems that resolved by the end of every half-hour episode. And it was all so depressing, and I got more depressed, only to become more of a target at school, only to retreat into television again once I got home. This is called addiction. And yes, I was and am a TV addict. Also, another way I avoided my pain was getting into all sorts of geeky things, taking things apart to see how they work, and sometimes being able to put them back together, and sometimes even with extra parts left over, they would sort of work or do something anyways, and it was way cool. But there was another side to it. It was totally solo. And doing these geeky things was one of the things all the bullies were beating me up for every day. This is a fail, or so I looked at it that way. When you're depressed, everything seems like a fail. And everything seems to be full of shame, and everything seems to suck. And I was totally depressed. And even though I was doing this cool thing, it led to failure too. But the thing is, when I first started taking these things apart and being unable to put them back together, that was really a failure. And that led to me feeling like my life was a failure, and it put me into more shame every time, and every failure was another proof that I deserved getting beaten up by these bullies, and it proved that I'm a miserable piece of crap that deserved all this stuff. But as I kept doing it, maybe not for the right reasons, more like it was fascinating, and when I was doing it, I wouldn't feel the pain of all that stuff. I learned a lot, and I did it more, and eventually I could put things together in very interesting ways, and sometimes I did things that were totally unintended by the original manufacturers. Now I know that this is called hacking. Back then I didn't know, I just knew it was cool. But hacking is what I think a lot of us do here and what I do all the time. Hacking is all about failure. It's a really important part of it. And hacking, the way I'm using it here, is defined as, the way I like to define it, taking anything in the world as a resource, using those resources to improve your project, even if it means using those resources in ways unintended by the people who created the resource, and then sharing the results. That's hacking. That's what we do at hackerspaces. And that's what we do at schools if it's a worthwhile school, and I hope you're doing it here. But we can hack anything. We can even hack ourselves. Another important aspect of failure is unexpected results. You expect one thing, but something else happens. It's different than expected. But to hack well, you need to try stuff. It's totally fine if you have no idea what the results will be. You try it just because you want to try it, just to see what happens. And whether or not things come out as intended, that's totally unimportant. Regardless of the outcome, you'll learn from the results, and you'll learn from this experience and hopefully share it. And this is exactly what science is about. The scientific method is making a hypothesis, setting up an experiment to test the hypothesis, and then learn from the results, whether it came out as expected or not. If you require the outcome of an experiment to be as expected, that's bad science. Good science requires that you're open to the outcome being whatever the outcome is. And hopefully you'll choose to learn from the result. And if you like, come up with a new hypothesis that you can then test. That's science. Science, like hacking, requires lots of failures, unexpected results, before coming up with useful theories that are really cool for lots of people. I do science in lots of ways, but I do science on myself. I use my life as a laboratory to run experiments on myself. It's kind of cool. So up until a certain point in my life, all the choices I made were based solely on what I believed other people wanted of me. I was too depressed to actually make choices based on what I wanted. I didn't know what I wanted. And all I really knew is that I didn't want to be depressed. But eventually, I made a choice for myself. Eventually, I realized that even though I watched hours and hours of TV every day, I actually didn't like TV. I asked myself when I was a little kid, why do I watch TV every day for hours and hours when I don't even like it? And I didn't know the answer, so I kept doing it. But at one point in my life, when I was about 21, I asked that same question again. And this time I had an answer. And the answer was, again, I don't know. But I knew that I didn't have to keep doing it. So I quit. And suddenly, all of those things that I'd been pushing away that were painful came screaming back or up into consciousness. Suddenly I had so much time that I didn't know what to do with. And all this stuff came screaming to consciousness, and it sucked. And it seemed like a total failure at the time, but only for a little while. Because I realized one very important thing from that. For the first time in my life, I made a choice for myself. And it had a huge impact on my life. So that came up with an hypothesis. If I made choices based on what I thought might make my life better, what I believed to the best of my ability might make my life better, perhaps over time, with enough trial and error, even if there's lots of error, and learning from the consequences, perhaps life would get better. Well, after lots and lots of these kinds of experiments on myself, the result was, after a long time, I eventually learned to live a life that was pretty cool. The hardest part of that, of course, was being patient with myself. That's a difficult part in depression, but I got there. I could make a living after a while consulting in geeky electronic stuff, which by then I was really good at. I'd put my 10,000 hours in, doing geeky stuff for small companies, able to make enough money working only a few months out of the year. And I thought that was pretty cool. But after about a decade of this, I had the bright idea of starting my own company in Silly Valley. That's what I call it, Silicon Valley. I started a company called 3Ware. We made RAID controllers. And don't worry about what a RAID controller is if you don't know what it is, but at the time it seemed an okay enough way to make money. Well, it seemed that way until the VCs took over. VCs, that's what they do. VCs, that's venture capitalists. More deservedly known as vulture capitalists. What VCs do, vulture capitalists, they invest in your company knowing that they will do whatever they can to take over your company by having at least 51% of the shares. Once they have that, they take over, they start making outrageously stupid decisions and fire the founders when they complain. That's what VCs do. I hope none of you experience that. If you ever have a chance to get a VC-funded thing, don't! Seriously, think about it. So anyways, I managed not to get fired because I quit before they could do that. They fired the other founders, but I went back to consulting and I went back to a pretty cool life. But the thing is, after going through all of that, I wanted more than a pretty cool life. I wanted a life I loved. I wanted to have a reason to jump out of bed and be excited about problems that I was going to solve for the work I did. I came up with a hypothesis. There must be a way, I thought, to do what I love, and in so doing what I love, make enough to keep doing what I love. And that would be my definition of success. Try again?
Yeah, just try this one. I don't know what the other one is.
Is it this?
Yeah. It'll be better than the microphone.
Okay. Feel.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Are we back on?
Are we back on?
Hello, hello?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So I'll turn that one. I'm wired. Yeah, so my definition of success that I came up with is doing what I love, and in so doing what I love, make enough to keep doing what I love. That seemed like it would be kind of awesome. You know, I had no idea what that would be, but I wanted to try an experiment to test this. So I saved a year's worth of expenses. I was lucky enough that I could do that. And for a year, I told myself I would only choose to do something if I believed I loved it. And I kind of made an exception for laundry. But what would life be like if for a whole year I only did what I loved, including only taking on work if I loved it? And that was scary. That was really scary because I was a consultant, you know, and if I say no to people for a whole year, would I ever get work again? How would I make money ever again? You know, I just didn't know, but I figured I had enough resources, friends, I could always go back to consulting or working at a cafe or something, but I had to try this. So the thing is, if I didn't make time by quitting doing things that were just okay, I wouldn't have enough time to explore what I actually loved. And that's really what I wanted to do. So I started by doing a bunch of volunteer work, which I knew I loved. And there was a lot of that I'd been doing all along. I didn't know how to make money with it. None of it made money, it's volunteer work. But to see if I could make money with the volunteer work, I took a class on grant writing. And for several months, I was working on trying to get grants for doing the volunteer work I did. But after several months of this, I realized I don't love grant writing. It's okay, but I definitely didn't love it, and it made me feel like, I have to get out of bed and do this grant. Clue! So I wrote that up as a failure, and started focusing on other things that I love, like geeky projects that I'd been thinking about for a long time but hadn't worked on, hadn't played with, because when I'm working with electronics, with things that were just kind of okay, I didn't have energy to play with electronics when I got home. But now I had the time and the energy. So I started working on them, and this one project really got on a roll, and that's TV Be Gone. And of course, I wasn't working on any of these things to make money. I mean, who would make a business plan out of a remote control that turns TVs off in public places? I just wanted one for me. I'm a TV addict, right? Now I could get rid of the one in my home, but I can't get rid of them in public places, and they're popping up everywhere in public places, and I want to get rid of those things. And I was obsessed. And the thing is, it was such a simple idea. It's so easy. All you have to do is get the off codes for all the TVs, the popular TVs, and then transmit them. And an off code is just infrared light blinking on and off and on and off at just the right rate to be perceived of as an off code by a TV. And there are a lot of those, but it's just blinking lights. And I know how to blink a light with a microcontroller. That's what all these things are. And I've been doing it for years, and all I have to do is do it with infrared. And, what could be simpler? But what I thought would take me a few weeks took me a year and a half. That's kind of a failure. But it didn't feel like a failure. It didn't feel like a failure. It was just something I was obsessed doing, and a year and a half, I didn't care. I just did it, but it was much more difficult than I thought, because for one thing, I needed lots of off codes, and it turns out that TV manufacturers don't publish them. But I bought a whole bunch of universal remote controls, and I figured all I have to do is record the off codes from them.
For good reason.
What's that?
They don't publish it for good reason.
Actually, they don't publish it because there's no reason for them to. They don't care. But they can't make money by doing it. They don't lose money, but it takes time and effort, so they don't publish it. And so I bought universal remote controls. All I had to do was record the output from them, pressing the off button. But back in 2003, when I was doing all of this, logic analyzers cost $10,000. I couldn't afford that. So I made my own, because I was obsessed. I needed to get these off codes, and I needed to turn off TVs in public places. And because I love this project, I just plowed through all these things. I eventually made a prototype work, and I went all over San Francisco, where I live, turning TVs off in public places and having a great time. And of course, all of my friends wanted one. They're my friends, But they tell their friends, and most of their friends wanted one. And I thought that was kind of cool, but how am I going to make enough for all these people? And then when it turned out that my friends, many of them wanted one, that's when I saw an opportunity where it was totally unexpected. And I took a gamble and made as many as I could afford, which was 20,000. That's a lot of TV Be-Gones. But I did the math, and I figured out that if I could sell 5,000 of them, that I could break even. And even if it took 5 years, it didn't matter. I could break even, and wouldn't it be incredibly cool to have 5,000 people all over the world turning TVs off in public places? So I did it. And as it turned out, I sold all 20,000 in 3 weeks. That is kind of an unexpected result, which really is a fail. But what a successful failure. And my life's never been the same since. It got me into doing all sorts of things that I really love doing. That first day of sales, one of the reasons why it was so successful is all this media started calling me. And it turned out that I love talking to media. And, what's not to like? They ask me questions, I tell my opinion, and then they tell the world. And then they do it again. It's kind of cool. And then public speaking, if anyone back Ben would have told me that TVGon would have caused me to be up in front of even, friendly people like you. Public speaking, I would have done absolutely everything in my power to make it not happen, because public speaking is about the most terrifying thing imaginable for an introverted geek like me. And it turned out I like it. I actually love it. I still get scared, but that's okay too. Yeah. So anyways, since then, that's how I've made a living. It's the only way really I've made money since 2004. This is a project I love, and I make enough money from this project that I love to keep doing this project I love and everything else I do that I love. That's success. That's my definition of success. What would your life be like if you did what you loved and got enough doing what you love to keep doing what you love? I hope all of you experience that success, but you'll only do it if you attempt to do it. But in any case, this success for me was actually unexpected results, which means that it's a failure. This was caused by my TV addiction and these solo geeky projects, which were two of several things in my life as a kid that I thought was totally horribly wrong with me and why all the bullies used to beat me up. And yet, what an incredibly successful failure. So this success, which is a failure, which is a success, how do you want to look at it? It's up to each of us to look at things in our own way. So I want to encourage all of you to fail. I want to encourage you all to fail often. You need to take risks in your life in order to do anything worthwhile. You need to be able to risk doing something that you might suck at. You need to allow yourself to fail and fail a lot. You can hack yourself, and it's way worthwhile. It can be kind of scary, but please make choices for yourself. See what happens. And if you learn from what happens, and then you can make new choices based on what you learned. And if you make those choices based to the best of your ability on what you believe might make your life a little bit better, what would happen? Some choices might give unexpected results. Some choices might make you feel full of shame. But you can, if you learn from those results and then make new choices, knowing what you now know. And if you keep making choices based on what you believe will make your life a little bit better, maybe, hopefully, probably, over time, you'll look back and see that all of your failures and successes led you to where you are now, living a life you love because of the choices you made. Envision that. The choices you made all of this happen. Choice is a powerful thing. So please choose well what you do with the time of your life. So, it's a bit of my story, and hopefully, a little bit of inspiration to do something cool next, whatever it is for you.
Excellent. Thank
So-
you so much.
You're welcome. Yeah, and should I show off some of this stuff, or?
Yeah,
sure.
Why don't you do that while you're at it?
Yeah, and I just go through these a little bit. So TV Be Gone, that's how I make a living, and this is the package it comes in. But after I did TV Be Gone and became sort of internet famous, I got invited to my first hacker conference and the first maker fair. These are amazing events where people come together to show off their projects, and I felt totally at home for the first time in a group in my life. Because this is a group of introverted geeks, and it was wonderful. It was my tribe. We're all together doing these things. But the thing is that was weird to me, even though it was totally wonderful, no one was actually making anything at these events. They were just showing off things that they made. You know, and especially at a maker fair. It's not a made fair. So I wanted to become involved at the hacker conferences and maker fairs. So the next chance I had at one of these events, I set up a table of 10 soldering irons, and I made a kit for people to make. And it was a more primitive version of a TV Be Gone kit, but this is the latest version. And I was mobbed, totally mobbed for the entire conference. And the next event, I set up 20 soldering irons. And again, I was mobbed. And I had more kits too. And the next one, I doubled it again and made 40 soldering irons with a few friends who helped teach how to solder as well. And again, I was mobbed. And now when I do it, I realize my limit is about 54 soldering irons with a whole bunch of people helping who I trained how to teach soldering. And I have a whole bunch of these kits. So TV1 kit is pretty cool. It turns off TVs at 50 meters away, because sometimes you need to turn TVs off from far
All
away.
over the world?
Yeah, they work everywhere. And everything I do is open source, meaning the plans are online, you can download them for free and do whatever you want with them. They're all very hackable because I document them extremely well so people can learn from it and do their own cool things with it. So TV Gone's open source. A lot of people make this. I don't get a penny from it, but they show their friends and they say, look what I made, it turns TVs off, it's really cool. And they go around turning TVs off and showing their friends, and their friends want to turn TVs off, and then some percentage of them are going to buy my thing. You can't pay for PR like that, so like if I patented this, it wouldn't work. Open source is just great. And yeah, so anyways, that's TV Gone Kit, and there's no case for it. You don't need a case, but I thought it'd be fun to put one in a hat. So with the TV Gone, all you got to do is, I've added an extra switch up here, is act like you're scratching your head and look at the TV to turn it off. Other people have done other things. They put one in a hoodie and some conductive thread to the metal zipper, and all you have to do is zip up or down to turn TVs on. So, yeah, and here's someone, a kit from someone who's now a friend of mine. She made this before we met, and she calls herself Lady Ada. She makes lots of cool kits and sells them as a result of this becoming popular. It's her first kit, and it was popular. It's called Mini POV, and she makes a living making and selling cool kits, doing what she loves. When you turn it on, it looks like a column of flickering lights. That's because it's a column of flickering lights. But they're flickering in a special way so that through persistence of vision, when I wave it back and forth, you'll see the image I programmed in it. And that's what this is intended to do if you use it as intended. You can program this microcontroller, computer chip, with a programming port here, with your own message. Persistence of vision means your vision system continues to see light a little bit longer after it's gone. So it allows you to see this image. It's never all lit up at once. It's just that dot, refreshing so fast that your vision system can't keep up with it, and you've put it together as that image. Our brains, when something's happening that your brains can't make sense of, it makes stuff up. But in a society, we have a consensus reality, and we put images together in a way that we can communicate with. And that's why these things work with persistence of vision. So anyways, I programmed a message in here that I like. And but people who make this kit, I show them how to program it, and they can put anything in there they like. But this kit, you can hack it. It's a resource. You don't have to do it as intended, even though it's really cool, I think. And the person who made it is really cool. That doesn't mean I have to make it and use it the way the kit maker intended. So here's one. Same thing, Mini POV kit. But I programmed the microcontroller to be Knight Rider Cylon pattern just because I thought it was cool. And here's another one that instead of 8 red lights, I've got a red, a green, and a blue light. And then in computers, things are just on or off. So, and yet these are looking like they're fading in and out, right? They're not. They're perceived to be fading in and out. And I do that with persistence of vision. I just turn them on and off and on and off and on and off so fast you can't tell that they're blinking, but I vary the amount of time on versus off. So when it's on more than it's off, it looks brighter. When it's on less than it's off, it looks dimmer. If I wave it back and forth, you won't see an image, but you'll see the pulses change their widths. And in electronics, anything changing is called modulation. So the technical term for how this works is pulse width modulation. So when the width looks wider, it's the equivalent of a light being bright. When the width looks narrower, it's the equivalent of the light being dim. But the idea of this is not to wave it back and forth, but to take some light diffusers, high-tech light diffusers, salsa cups, and mix the light together. And then you get lots of colors besides red, green, and blue. This is actually 1 pixel. And a color pixel. Color pixel is a red, a green, and a blue dot that can make just about any color. This has 1 million pixels. All of them are really close together, and together they make that image. That's 1 pixel. I call that trippy RGB light. This is trippy RGB waves. It works exactly the same. When you first turn it on, the computer chip, the microcontroller, makes it go red, then green, then blue, and then lots and lots more colors that are programmed into it. And the red and the green and blue light are in this drinking straw, which is my high-tech light diffuser. But this one, as well as doing that, has extra functionality to make waves, and this is trippy RGB waves. And the idea is to get waves of colors. So there's this light here, which is invisible. It's actually infrared, the exact same thing that's in TV Be Gone, and green, blue, and then lots more colors. Red, green, blue, lots of colors. So with one of them, that's not so fascinating. But if you have a whole bunch of them, like here, I have them all on 1 battery there, then you should get waves of colors in this. I don't know if you can all see that. Come up and play with it afterwards, it's fun. So I want a whole wall full of them as I have time. So here's another thing that I hacked from Mini POV. It's glued to the side here, and when you turn it on, instead of having a sequence of things for an image that you get when you wave back and forth, it's blinking lights in front of your eyes. And then 2 of the signals, which used to be blinking lights, now go into this headphone jack, so it's pulsing speakers, so it makes sound. And then I programmed it for a 14-minute long meditation brainwave sequence. I wrote this up for Make Magazine. Make Magazine is a magazine with lots of cool projects about making just about anything. This is one of Make Magazine's more popular projects, even still, many years later. I actually no longer help Maker Faire because they took $10 million of US military money. And I thought that was horrible, so I don't help them anymore. I still think it's a cool event and cool magazine, but I can't help. But anyways, this helps people meditate. I thought that would be kind of nice. And what makes it fun, though, is that you hallucinate colors and patterns from your imagination as you go along. And it turns out people like hallucinating. If you want to try it, feel free. You do it with your eyes closed. Here, just pass it around. It does have blinky lights, so if you're epileptic or something like that, be aware. You can do it for as long or as short as you like, and you don't have to do it at all, of course. Since that was popular, I had a ready-made version manufactured. I call these trip glasses. So, yeah, pass these around. They're exactly the same function. And those are actually simplified from this project that I had been working on since 2005. This one has, unlike the trip glasses brain machine, This one is actually comfortable. And let me turn it on. Yeah, it has speakers here, and there's different colored lights here. If you want to try it, wrap it around so the speakers cover your ears. Try that for a few seconds. It's kind of nice. Inside of there, the hardware is really simple, but the magic is the program, which is an 8-voice polyphonic music synthesizer, all in 8K of memory. Kind of magical. Here's another kit that I hacked from Mini POV. It's 27 LEDs in the shape of a cube, and you can get low-res 3D display, very low-res. I got the idea for this from my first hacker conference, where there was, let's see, this is 27 LEDs, 3 by 3 by 3. The one I saw at the first Chaos Congress I went to is 8 by 8 by 8. That's 512 LEDs, all of them RGB, and it's beautiful. But that took a bunch of people who are really good at what they do a month to make. This is a kit anyone can make in an evening, and I like promoting laziness, so. Yeah, so just a couple more kits. My friend Jimmy saw this before we were friends. He saw it in Make Magazine's website, and he thought it was really fascinating. So he made, for Valentine's Day, 27 LEDs in the shape of a heart, and entered it into a contest on Instructables and won the contest, and started making kits out of this. And that's about when I met him. And he was doing all these creative things, working on a job that he thought was just okay. And I kept telling him, you should quit your goddamn job and do something worthwhile with your life. It took 9 months, but I finally got him to quit his job, and now he makes a living doing, making and selling cool kits and teaching electronics. So this is called Open Heart. It runs on an Arduino. And this is a particular kind of Arduino made by Adafruit that's designed to be used on solderless breadboards, like this. Did a more intense version of that and calls this the LOL shield, LOL shield. LOL, you know what that stands for?
Lots of LED.
Indeed, lots of LEDs, because there's 126 LEDs that you have to solder on this to make it work, and this has a message programmed in it. And it's a true message. But you can also program lots of cool patterns, like this one. You make some different colors, including ultraviolet, which is kind of trippy. You can also make games with it. So yeah, you know, it's kind of this progression of things that just sort of happened, all because I worked on a project that I loved, doing it only because I loved it. And it just leads one thing to another, and now I find my life is mostly going around the world, teaching people to solder and helping hackerspaces and people forming communities and I don't know, making blinky lights.
Fantastic. Thank you for your second round of the talk. Excellent. I have a perfect follow-on on your LOL shield, because we just recently opened up a new interdisciplinary center, a research center, and we wanted something at the event that would, you know, give people a playful way to interact with each other. So we actually used the LOL shield design and sort of extended it to a little name tag that would display how many people you had actually already interacted with at the conference.
Oh, interesting.
Using a little infrared, you know, back and forth protocol, counting up how many people have you actually stood in front of and worked with.
Everyone has a unique ID.
Exactly. Yeah. So they all get a unique ID, and then you can see how many people you've seen. So actually built right on top of the LOL shield. So
cool.
It just gets extended. I'll show you one of the name tags later.
That's one of the great things with open source.
Exactly.